1.1. Which term is best defined by the phrase the increasing percentage of the population living in towns and cities? Shade 1 circle in for 1 mark. So urban sprawl, that is where cities expand and go into the rural or urban fringe or the countryside. It's not quite that one. C, migration, that's just the movement of people. D, urban regeneration, that is where an area in a city gets improved, so it's not that one. So urbanisation, that is the growth of towns and cities, so the answer is B. Study figure 1, a graph showing the percentage of the population living in urban areas in different parts of the world from 1950 to a projected idea of the future in 2050. So urban areas, towns and cities. So we've got a graph. We've got 3 lines. We've got the blue for the rich countries, HICs. You've got the orangey brown line for the developing countries like India, China, Brazil. And then the poorest countries are the red. So question 1.2, you've got a gap fill. You've got 1 mark for each gap that you get correct. So using the words here, can we fill in the gaps correctly? So the smallest increase in percentage of urban population is expected to be in where? So the smallest increase, that's going to mean the line does not go up quite a lot. So it's quite a flat line. So basically, which line is the flattest? So if we go up straight away, we can just simply by having a quick look, we know we can get rid of this line that's out of the blue and the red one. So the red line goes up from roughly 10% to just under 50. So it's about 40% increase. The blue line is about 56 going up to about 88. So the blue line is the shallowest, the flattest. So the first point would be HIC. From 2020, the rate of increase is expected to what in NEEs? So let's make sure we get the NEE line, which is the orangey brown one. From 2020, what is going to happen? Well, before 2020, that line is quite steep. After 2020, the line is not quite as steep. So the answer for the second point is to say that the line, or the rate, sorry, is going to slow down. Between 2000 and 2050, the LICs are projected to have almost what in a percentage living in urban areas? So again, check the dates from 2000 to 2050. What is going to happen to it? So from that point there to that there. So before that, it was around about 10%. From 2050, we're talking about 24%. 2050 is 48. So it has doubled for the final mark. 1.3, you've got a pie chart showing the reasons for rural to urban migration in the region of Pakistan. Rural urban migration, that's the movement of people from the countryside to the cities. Your question is to describe the pattern of reasons for migration shown in figure 2. So 2 mark question, so we basically need 2 fairly simple and short statements to just describe what is on the pie chart. So you could have, for instance, push factors, the red colour, is more important than the pull factors, or you can flip it around. You can say the pull factors are less important than the push. You could say the biggest reason is war against terrorism, which is obviously this big section here. You could say the least important reason are things like religious differences or hostility in village. So as long as you give 2 separate points, you should get 4 marks. Figure 3, some social media comments about traffic in a city in India called Bangalore. Your question 1.4, using this figure, suggests one problem faced by people in Bangalore as a result of traffic congestion or traffic jams. So 2 marks, but Instead of having two separate points, it's got to be one that you develop. So, using the mark scheme, all we have to do to get 1 mark, surprisingly, is simply just by repeating sort of one of these here. So you could say the roads are of poor quality. To develop your point, you could say which means that people will have to drive slower, or people's cars might be damaged as a result, for example, punctures. You could say public transport, so trains, trams, taxis, things like that, is not very good. So again, you're just sort of copying from here. That'll get you 1 mark. And then you need to develop your point. And obviously, if public transport is not very good, well then the result is more people will be taking their own transport, so cars. So you could say public transport is not very good, which means there are more cars on the road. And obviously, the more cars there are, the more congestion, the longer the journeys will be, and as a result, people will be late for work. So something like that. 1.6, calculate the range in GCSE scores shown in figure 4. So figure 4, what you've got is the collective GCSE score in a points-based system, and then different parts of the city. You've got the city centre, the inner city, and the suburbs. So the range is simply the biggest number take away the smallest number. So the biggest number is 369, which is represented here and here. Take away the smallest number, which is 307. So the answer is 62. 1.7. Using figure 4 and your own understanding, suggest reasons for inequalities in education in urban areas in the UK. Inequalities, that just means it's unequal. So why is it that certain parts of this city have good GCSE scores and other parts don't? So, tricky question this, but the key term is deindustrialisation. So what we've got to appreciate, in a lot of UK cities, we did have a lot of manufacturing and a lot of factories, but these jobs have gone, they've gone abroad. And this is called deindustrialisation. Now, what that does is that leads to a lot of areas of poverty in and around the city centre. So that's a bit of a stretch, but once you've got there, you then have to link the fact that there aren't many jobs in the city centre to a lack of money, so lower incomes, and also lower aspirations for people as well. If there are no opportunities to get jobs, what is motivating kids to work hard to get good GCSEs? Also, you've got to sort of try and link the fact that if people are poorer, potentially they're not going to have good access to healthcare, they're going to be quite deprived, so they might be off school a lot more, which will affect attendance. Have a poorer diet will also impact on concentration. You've got to use the figure, so make sure you use a part of the city, and you might quote a couple of figures to suggest the pattern. You could also say that in a lot of cities, counter-urbanisation has happened. So basically, that is where people move out of the city centre towards the suburbs here. Obviously, again, you just flip it around and you just explain the opposite. So if there's wealth here, these people have higher aspirations, better diet, more opportunities. So as a result, their sort of GCSE scores will improve. 1.8. Outline one way that national migration has led to a change in the character of a named UK city. So it's a 2-mark question, but be careful. You can't have 2 separate points. You've just got to develop one as it's asked for. So this question is quite a tricky one. Our named UK city is obviously Nottingham. So how has the fact that people have moved to Nottingham from other places of the UK, how has it changed the city? So one point could be to say that obviously more people have moved to Nottingham, so there is a greater need for houses to be built. Now, these houses, because of a lack of space in the city centre, are going to be built around the outskirts. So you could link it into a change in the rural environment, the countryside, or the urban rural fringe, and maybe getting a bit about the field farm development and the fact that there was a farm on a greenfield site. Now there is a new housing development. Again, that's forcing mice to invade local houses because their habitat has been destroyed, for instance. You could also mention, and just try and talk quite generally about the fact that if there are more people, there's going to be a bigger strain on public services such as the QMC hospital or maybe the transport system, and the fact that there are more cars on the road now, so traffic congestion has increased. Question 1.9. To what extent has urban change created environmental challenges in a UK city you have studied? It's a 9-mark question, so we would be expecting around 10 minutes worth of writing. Let's break it down. So the UK city is Nottingham, and the question is basically asking, do you agree, to what extent has the fact that Nottingham has grown into the city it is today, has it created basically bad things for nature? So we need some specifics in there. For example, Nottingham has grown as a result of it getting obviously bigger. So a lot of these houses are now being built in the countryside or the rural urban fringe. So this is called urban sprawl. So a lot of the fields have been built on, impacting on the biodiversity in the area or impact on local food chains. You can talk about Field Farm in Stapleford that was a greenfield site that had not really been built on too much before, turned into a proper development. And then you can link in the fact that mice are now invading local homes because their habitat has been destroyed. We can also talk about pollution levels. In Nottingham 2011, it was one of the most polluted cities in the world, both by something called PM10, which is very, very small particles that can be breathed in. These come from building sites or derelict buildings, or you can talk about harmful emissions that come from diesel-powered transportation, such as buses and taxis. And Nottingham had a lot of these that gave out nitrogen oxides. Now, to get 7, 8 or 9, you've got to try and argue to what extent. So ideally, the best answers are yes, it does create some problems, but there are 1 or 2 good things as well. So there's something called urban greening, which is where you introduce maybe small-scale projects that have a lot of greenery, a lot of grass, a lot of plants and vegetation to improve maybe things like the air quality. So maybe you can briefly talk about Hockerton and the fact it is an area that is basically protected. There is a lot of grass, there's lots of ponds, so it's trying to protect wildlife as well and improve the environment. So just to reference that will be enough to get you into that top bracket.